Good evening, everyone. My name is Rich Mucci. I know pretty much all of you. I'm here on behalf of the Chamber of Commerce Board of Directors. I sent a letter off to all of you and Lisa on February 27th concerning the MBTA project. And I wanted to come before you tonight about that letter. We have not received a response yet. We're hoping a response will be coming. But this project, I think people are starting to wake up in the center business community and realize what this project entails. And people are very nervous. This is a matter of survival for a lot of these businesses, and many of them right now are wondering if they're going to survive this project. We've put forth a suggestion in terms of mitigation for parking and access and some other measures. We've also made a recommendation concerning design, which happens to be the Shore Road ramp that we're opposed to for various reasons that's cited in the letter. This is just the tip of the iceberg for this business community. 73 businesses have signed on to that letter and support the action. We're united, and we need a robust mitigation plan from this board, from this town, in order to survive in this time of construction. I think every time I come to a meeting, I hear another construction project. I think you have every corner of this town under construction in the next year, whether it's electrical, water, train stations, schools. It's just how much more can we take in terms of access? We need answers. We need a concrete plan in place. And the time is now. It's not in the summer. It's not in the fall when this construction starts. It's now. And I implore you to engage us in a dialogue quickly to get this plan in place, because the alternative is, and there's a growing movement amongst businesses in this town to oppose this train station renovation. And I know it's important for the town to have this project get done now, because there is funding for this project, but not at all costs. It can't be the business community that shoulders this load alone. It needs to be shared by everyone who uses the center, whether it's teachers, students, business owners, customers, residents. The center is a hub of activity in this community, and we need to spread out the burden of this project beyond just the businesses that literally are going to have this project built on top of them. I've been in touch with Nathan Ray. Thank you, Lisa, for putting us in touch. I have a meeting with him on Thursday with a couple of other board members to begin a dialogue with the MBTA in terms of their mitigation plan, but a lot of it's going to come from this town and stepping up to save these businesses. We estimate that in the first 3 months of this project, we'll probably lose a third of the businesses in this town if nothing is done. And that's a conservative estimate. We need to do something. Some of these businesses, Artie's here from Sims Jewelers. He's been in business in this town for 43 years. A lot of these businesses support the causes of this town and the charities in this town and are good members of this community. It is a center that's full of businesses. I was in Arlington yesterday. I couldn't believe how many for rent signs there were in Arlington. Same thing in Concord where I was the other day. That's happening in this town. And part of it is some nerves about this project. And we can't have more of that. We need to continue to have a robust business community and a vibrant center. And right now, what we see lying ahead of us, we can't see the light at the end of the tunnel without a plan. So I implore you to respond to that letter in due course, engage us in a dialogue, and involve our legislative delegation. We'll involve the MBTA and see where we can get this done. The alternative just isn't good for anyone. So thank you.
Thank you, Rich. We received the letter last week. We have it on our agenda to discuss tonight. So, I mean, the board obviously has to discuss those things in open meetings.
Sure.
So, but yes, absolutely. So making sure that everybody's needs are met as much as possible, and that the burden doesn't fall disproportionately on any section of the town is definitely very important to this board.
Great.
So, thank you.
Thank you.
Next item on the agenda is the MBTA.
Okay, so I'd actually like to talk about both the letter that the MBTA sent to us on March 3rd, as well as the letter from the Chamber of Commerce on February 27, 2020. So both of these are in your packet, but they're kind of in two different locations. So I'm going to ask Beth to come up first, and we're going to talk about the Winchester Center Station Improvements letter from the MBTA to my office dated March 3rd. This is what they consider a cost-sharing letter, which talks about some key pieces of the project that we've had ongoing conversations about, whether they're cost overruns and whether the town would like to participate in sharing these costs. So I do want to say that our stance from the beginning is we do not believe that there should be any cost sharing in this project, that this is an MBTA project, period. And you'll see that over time, it's moved towards basically being an MBTA-funded project. However, there are a couple of issues that still remain. So I will just say in general, the first and the third item here on the stone veneer and on the bridge materials, this is really looking at the materials that you see on various parts. It's a fairly complex project in that you have sort of the existing stone, you have new ramps, a head house, you have sort of switchbacks, so understanding exactly what material is being salvaged, expanded, what happening where is a little bit complicated. The last time Beth and I met with them and looked at the plans, it wasn't clear on the plans that they have what is what, and we've asked for clarification. I don't know if they haven't given anything to me. I'm not
No,
sure
I
if they've
haven't
given
seen
anything
any
to you.
revised plans. So what's proposed on, we focused primarily on our concerns on what you can see from the commons, so what's shown from the Laraway roadside. So where the existing ramp is, that ramp will be torn down. And the new ramp will be kind of offset, so it'll be the starting point of the ramp will be closest to the existing viaduct, and then it'll ramp up and out, so it'll kind of overhang. So that wall that exists today as the viaduct will remain stone, but the new lower ramp that's being built will be concrete. So from a low point to a high point, as that ramp goes up, that will be concrete. So you'll see the stone behind it, but that lower piece will be concrete. Everything else on that wall will be stone, but then when you get to the new stairs that's being built at Old Laraway, where that stair bumps out, that will be concrete as well. And then at the Waterfield and Aberjona ends, for the most part, they'll be preserving some stone, but the new stair that's built will be concrete.
Maybe I'll see it when it goes up, but when you say concrete, is it like just gray concrete?
Right, so that we haven't gotten to the, I mean, we're at 100% design. I feel like we should be there, but
Should
we're
know
not there
that.
yet. So that's the details we've asked for.
Okay.
What their original plan was trying to recreate the existing
Yeah.
stone with a concrete product, like a Outback Steakhouse type situation. That's all I can think of.
Yeah.
Which the working group said that wasn't what we wanted. We would rather see something that looks new, as opposed to trying to recreate what's there.
Right, contrasts with it, yeah.
Exactly.
Okay.
So we haven't seen the last call that Lisa and I had last week with them before the hearing. They were still working out the details, and we haven't seen what that
Okay.
product is.
And we also talked about the possibility that if it's going to be concrete, that it would be, that it just be flat concrete and then be able to have art installations.
Yeah.
Right.
At high school or Griffin Museum, right, just an extension of,
Yep.
Yeah.
So there's been a conversation about trying to use some of the stone that's removed and pulverize it so it can be mixed with the aggregate, so the concrete coloring kind of matches the coloring out there. That's beyond my knowledge of how those products are created, but that's something that we have talked about with the team. So.
So these rapidly rotating
Yeah, stop that.
drawings here.
It's
So
making me dizzy.
these are actually not the latest that they've given to us for the last meeting. But like, for example, like underneath these bridges, these abutments here, we're still trying to get a sense of what material is for what abutment. And like, this might be different than this, which is different than that section. So that's what we're trying to figure out. So this is still in line with the conversation we've had with them about, again, moving away from Outback Steakhouse and working with us on a more flatter concrete or a different kind of design. What I don't understand in their letter is, so it says the MBTA views what they talked about as meeting the town's previous concession on the use of salvaged stone, primarily along the Laraway Road elevation. The MBTA will include this scope in the current project budget if this does not exceed $100,000. If the cost grows, the MBTA will look to the town for cost sharing of this scope. So, not exactly sure what they mean by what the scope is
Yeah.
actually and
Is
what
it
they.
going to cost that much, they think, 100,000, or is that just kind
It's
of?
gonna cost more than
That's
100,000.
just their amount,
So
'cause
they're
yeah, it's-
saying,
I seemed
what-
very
I
low.
think what they're saying is that if we don't agree with what they've shown in the 99% plans, that when they go to, if we're asking for
Oh, I
them
see.
to do more, so if we're asking them, for example, to take the stair at Larry Road and use a stone
Mm-hmm.
veneer, if that's more than $100,000, they're gonna want us to participate in a,
Mm-hmm.
that's, again, my interpretation of how they wrote this. a
It's
little
really
confusing.
poorly worded. Yeah.
Yes.
Um,
Yeah. So we're asking for
Clarification?
plan clarification on exactly what is the scope, and we should sort of mention that we're still pushing for some major design changes as well, so we're sort of looking and commenting on their plans, but we're also sort of criticizing their plans from a macro standpoint. So the second point about the Quill Rotary Bridge and Ramp, I think we've made very clear that neither we nor the community supports this part of the project. And over the next couple of days, myself and the state delegation will be having conversations with the MBTA about pushing for alternatives. And hopefully we'll have more information for you as those conversations progress. Okay, so the bus stop, so this was a request early on to have the bus stop moved to the Aberjona parking lot. They came back with a cost estimate saying that it would, so there's a cost to both physically building the stop there, in terms of the bus shelter. There were some issues with, I think, turning radiuses that were being hotly debated, and then the T is also saying that that's going to lengthen the route time, and they actually wanted us to pay for whatever that route time extension would be. So we said, we're just gonna not have that be part of this project. That can happen at a future date. So we just sort of push that off the table. We have a couple of years to go over that discussion.
I just wanted to mention on the bridge abutments, part of the cost of what they're asking for the town to do here is to face the piers that are proposed in the Quill Rotary with granite to match what's out there. That was our request of the working group.
Oh, right.
So, I guess this is, to me, the only one that they're asking for is something that we've specifically requested.
As
or
opposed
asking.
to what?
As
Otherwise,
opposed to a raw concrete product.
so they would just leave it as concrete otherwise.
Right. And again, I'm not clear, but it could also mean like at Waterfield Road, right now there's granite edging at that, where the road goes under the viaduct. It could also mean in those areas as well, and that's something we've asked for clarification on, so, I think this is the one that we just kind of have to watch and see where it progresses, because the alternative raw concrete product might not be what the town wants, so, I think we'll just have to keep this as part of the conversation.
And then we're also pushing, again, for the ramp relocation, so if we're successful, then this is a moot point, because then they won't be building the
Although
pedestrian.
it could, like I said, it might not just be the piers, it could also be like at the Waterfield Bridge, side, so again, we just need to understand exactly.
But if they can move the ramp, it could theoretically save them enough money that they could pay for the rest of the things, so.
I don't know if they see it that way.
We'll see what they say.
They haven't exactly been forthcoming on cost, so.
I'm just not sure that, I mean, I don't think that we are going to agree to cost sharing on anything. It's an MBTA project, right? So for them to leave, I mean, obviously, a lot of things will be in better condition, but to replace what is currently granite with just concrete, that is not making it a better condition or even an equal condition to what it is right now. It's a worse condition. So that is not acceptable for them to either decide to make it a worse condition than it is today or to expect the town to pay to make it equal to what it is today. So I don't think we're asking for those abutments to be better than they are today. We're just asking for them to be the same. And there shouldn't
Not
be any
worse.
cost to the town
Yeah.
Yeah,
for that.
that's
Is
logical,
that-
that's logical, yes.
Okay.
I think we're all on the same page. I mean, I think Lisa and Beth, I mean, you've done a phenomenal job with this. The MBTA is impossible to deal with. And I think, we had a lot of feedback from residents coming out of the public hearing the other day, or info session. And I think a lot of what's happened, people are just hearing for the first time, even though we've been dealing with it for,
Yeah.
quite a long time. And the other thing, I don't think people realize that these are the kind of things that they're building everywhere. So we don't have a lot of freedom on, making them look a certain way because they're footing the bill, and there's safety reasons and accessibility reasons why these are in place. So, I think
Yeah,
we're there are limitations as far as the aesthetics, and we might have to make a decision and talk to town meeting about whether they want to invest in something, but certainly there's no money. I don't think anybody is willing to commit to any of this now, and we need to keep going on it and get shovels in the ground. So.
Okay, the next item is the demolition of the Chamber of Commerce building. So this is gonna be the crux of the conversation at Springtown meeting, because the previous approvals assume the demolition of this building, and they'll be asking town meeting to shift their easements, so that they're building, basically next to the Chamber of Commerce building. Partial versus full closure. I don't believe that partial closure is on the table for various reasons that the MBTA has stated in terms of the condition of the station plus the cost for partial closure. They have outlined in this section of the letter that it would be about a $4.7 million cost for them to provide a shuttle during the 28-month project schedule. So at a $7,000 daily rate, if you think about 500 riders, that is more than $10 a day. So that's a pretty significant cost. The cost benefit of doing that it doesn't make sense for us to say, for any of us to certainly pay for it. And then the question is, given the ridership survey that was done, again, that data I think was 2017 at the latest, it really said how many people walk and bike, and then what alternative they would use. So a significant number of those 500 would not likely use the shuttle, so we're talking about pretty significant costs per ride. And then I guess the question is, I think from our standpoint, we have not wanted to pay for this. Mike Day has put in $3 million into a request in the transportation bond bill, which is a long shot, but, there's part of me that says, okay, even if they fund it, that's a lot of money on a per rider basis. So that could be a potential conversation for realistically what money is available, and then realistically what are the kinds of things, especially when we hear from the chamber, realistically what are the kinds of mitigation? Because I think the chamber probably thinks spending $70 when it comes down to it or more on shuttling a rider from Winchester Station to Wedgmere is really a terrible waste of public dollars. There must be other ways in which we could use mitigation to help, help with economic development, help with real mitigation costs. So again, an ongoing conversation, but it was very interesting to see them actually break this down, because when they told us $4.5 million, I couldn't fathom how exactly they were going to do that.
we had a conversation that we started a couple years ago about continuing shuttle service for, not just serving the train station, but the town center and, when we looked at the cost involved of kind of running a shuttle service ourselves, like we used to have one in Winchester, and then, the demographics of the town, changed. But now with the, traffic and transportation issues that we've been spending quite a lot of money and time on, maybe as part of that conversation, we would just evaluate what it would look like to have a shuttle service in town on an ongoing basis throughout the day anyway. I think that a lot of people would use it actually, and that might be something that would interest the chamber as well, so I don't know.
Absolutely. Yep, so if there was a shuttle, it makes sense to actually get people where they need to be or where they want to be versus just between a quarter mile.
Yep.
Yeah.
Half mile station, so absolutely. If we do get any funding, then we would have a conversation with residents and businesses about how to actually provide a real shuttle that makes sense.
Yeah, we looked at the Lex Express in Lexington, and certainly they have a lot more land to cover and a lot more road to cover, but it was not as expensive as I think that we had thought in looking, as an ongoing operating cost, so might be worth it to check it out.
So I think just to comment on that, starting something up from scratch
Yep.
in terms of doing the study and then building up ridership, that it would be great to have that subsidized through
Right.
mitigation process, right? And
Yep.
then we can
To start it
evaluate
that way,
in
yep.
3 or 4 years, absolutely.
But,
Yeah, something to
if there
build
was
off of.
$3 million would go a much
Yes.
longer way in establishing that than in shuttling people between the center and Wedgemere.
And we've talked about this is with the mitigation with the River Street project as well on Cross
Yeah.
Street, that, that's one way to mitigate the traffic concerns there is,
Yeah,
that,
if there's
so,
147 apartments there, right, putting a shuttle that goes between that apartment building and the town center, right, and then being able to bring people both to the train station, or to transit, as well as to the businesses that are in the town center without having to worry about parking or traffic issues, right, so.
I would link it to the 40B on Cambridge Street as well, so
Yeah.
there's service in all that area.
yeah.
Okay, so to run through this additional town input is quite a bit, but it sort of talks about, they'll have to come back and work with you in terms of looking at the sort of the hours of operation, the access to the site. There's also looking at the hours of work. They did mention things like relocating the bike rack from Wedgemere, or sort of expanding bike racks, installation of scooter recharging stations, providing space and relevant signage for drop-off locations on Bacon. So a lot of people are dropped off, so I think on Bacon, it's no parking before 9.
On the field side, the other side is permit parking, the station side.
So just taking a look at whether we could do that. So I'm just going to go to the metal mesh screening. So my understanding is where they were talking about the metal mesh screening is now the glass.
It's very confusing how
Yeah, the
it's
way it was written
because
is-
it wasn't a request of the town, it's a
Yeah.
request of the town to get rid of it. And
Right.
so, I'm not sure how, yeah.
At least it looked like it was still mesh, but that's not the most recent
Yeah, and,
plan.
it's glass.
So, yeah.
Yeah. The last one, so this is the only one that I think is worth us talking about and considering. This is solar panels. So at the February 25th meeting, and I've gotten various emails, people have inquired about the use of solar panels on the canopies at the station. There was sort of some response from their engineer that said that the current way that the pillars are being designed to hold the canopies doesn't factor in the weight or the design of any solar panels. So they came up with a number that said that the town would be responsible for the implementation of the project. A complete and functional system for solar power in our initial estimate is in the range of 100,000. So it says the town should use this figure as they consider how to work through this this topic.
But that's something for later. That's not like they're expecting any money now to make it so that it can hold solar panels, right? That's my understanding of how they worded it. So if
Yeah,
we
I feel like
choose.
yeah, they said it would be set up for solar panels at some point.
So it is a conversation for now, because the MBTA will need to have Jacobs Engineering review the structural design of the the canopies to see if it could, basically how it would work with solar panels. But again, this is very little information here. There's a lot more investigation to be done.
Yeah.
But maybe some thumbs up or some consensus from you that this is a conversation worth happening.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
I think we definitely want to have solar panels there if possible, and, I mean,
So they're only really talking about getting Jacobs to look at the structural design of the canopies so that, you know, they don't build them so that it's impossible to put solar
So
on top.
I think
Or
it's
they-
unlikely that the structure right now is engineered to support the weight of solar
Support,
panels. So
okay.
there would be additional costs of construction
Ah.
associated with, not only with designing, but also constructing
Okay,
a sturdier system.
sturdier system.
To support that. I can't say that for sure, but that's my guess.
Yeah, that
of
makes
how they
sense.
try to design these as light as possible. So the question is, I think this 100,000 is just to evaluate it, right? Then there's the additional.
they're saying a complete and functional system, given the town would be only responsible for the actual cost of implementation, a complete and functional system for solar panel, in our initial estimate is in the range of $100,000. I think it's a low estimate.
I don't think anybody believes that.
That's why I thought it was just design, yeah.
I did too, and everything
Five
seems to be
different ways.
$100,000 in it, yeah, so,
I mean,
Becomes
given
implausible.
what other assistance.
Given the cost of steel, $100,000 seems like a very low estimate of what that would be.
But that'd be great.
Good point to be clarified, I guess.
yeah.
When we had discussed this a few years back on the solar panels, one of the concerns, and I thought it was Jacobs that had presented this to us as a concern, but, you know, we went through so many, different
Yeah.
people on this project, was that the servicing of the panels and maintaining them because of rocks and things that bounce off, that they
Yeah.
didn't recommend it because we would constantly be replacing panels. And so I think they said no. So it may be that we do invest in those panels somewhere else, you know, because obviously.
And the snow sliding off.
And the snow sliding off. If you come to my house, you can see what that looks like, because all of the snow from a roof falls on the walkway right after I shovel it. It's, the timing, you can set your watch
And it's,
to that.
and
Yeah.
it's impossible to shovel
Right.
because it's super compacted. Yeah.
Right,
I
so
have
then
the
we
same
just
issue.
decide not to
Yeah.
enter our house that way anymore. So,
So I think there's a couple other things that are not on this list that I wanted to mention. Well, actually, one of them is, but number one would be work hours. So obviously their estimate is 28 months. I don't know if there's any appetite to allow additional weekend work, or I'm just throwing it out there as there's obviously a trade-off with residents and business communities in terms of pros and cons, but it's something we should talk about as to whether or not trying to shrink some short-term pain is worth the long-term gain of shrinking that overall construction duration, worth a conversation. The other two pieces that are not included in here in terms of a cost estimate or cost sharing are elevator maintenance and drainage maintenance. So those are two pieces that the T has verbally said are something that may fall on the town.
Okay, that should be clarified, yeah.
Yeah. So our reading of the documents is that it is not within the purview, but it'd be best to have it embodied in writing somewhere. So as part of the easement discussion, I have asked the MBTA to provide me with whatever form documentation they have regarding easements, rather than just, because right now they're just showing us plans.
Plans, yeah.
I haven't received anything yet.
Lisa, I know that they've made some attempts to work with DCR to allow us to have people park on, in the lot for Shannon Beach, but, you know, do we have that in writing anywhere, that they will do some, you know,
Not yet.
exercise some level of efforts to do that? I mean,
I mean, we've talked to them numerous times that they have made those contacts.
yeah.
But they haven't gotten anywhere at this point.
So they reached out to DCR. DCR reached back out to the MBTA and said, we want information about what you need. MBTA provided that information, and my understanding is DCR has not responded. So we touched base with our delegation to reach out to their contacts. And so we're trying to work at it at multiple ends. I haven't heard anything yet in terms
Yeah.
of whether there's a response forthcoming.
I was just asking if there's some kind of agreement that we're going to enter into with MBTA, you know, just if them exercising their best efforts to make that happen is worth putting into that agreement.
Yeah. I did offer up that we would, like, so if DCR had some concerns about monitoring the site, we already have a system for how we issue permits to lots and then have staff to make sure that, you know, people are adhering to that, doing enforcement. So we would do the same. So if they're just concerned about like, who's coming in and out, you know, we'd say, here's permits, and we do the enforcement. Okay. The Winchester Center train station renovation is a very thoughtful letter that was signed by, I think, at least 70 businesses downtown. And I want to go through, I'll start with section 1, which is the design issues, and I'll sort of go through this with you, what my thoughts are, get your input, and then put a response together in a more formal sense. So the issues in design, this is primarily about the ramp on Shore Road, and saying that this is something that the chamber opposes. They would very much like to see something behind Thompson Street. So the town has continued to push for this. My understanding is that there continues to be significant challenges for the MBTA to build behind Thompson Street. They've given me some indication of what those challenges are. It's sort of like, you know, firewall, access, things like that. And I've conveyed to them an earlier offer from the chamber to help work with them on working with the private owners there, in terms of getting that access. There's also, I think, issues with, like, you know, noise mitigation, all sorts of things like that. That being said, in an earlier iteration, in the 10 years we've been conversing with the MBTA, there's been some thought about having the ramp move down, so shift away from Shore Road, shift away from Cool Rotary, and have the ramp be on the Abergona lot. So perhaps that's something that could be considered. You know, that we've been sort of pushing for no ramp on Shore Road. We've been pushing for Thompson. If Thompson is not possible, then we could let the MBTA know that we're open to a ramp on the Abergona lot. I personally have not discussed this with the chamber or people in that area, so have no sense of the thoughts about sort of trading off a ramp on Shore Road versus the Abergona lot. A couple of things, just thinking about off the top of my head, would be that it would eliminate the pedestrian bridge. It would eliminate the ramp on Shore Road where there's limited parking. Yes, there is limited parking on the Abergona lot, but it would be a significant less spaces per total spaces in that area. It's also not in a public right-of-way. You also don't have as close of businesses and residents who are in that area. So I just sort of want to get thoughts from the board about pushing for an Abergona lot alternative.
I think I mentioned before, you know, that there's been so many evolutions of this project over the past decade, and, you know, we keep moving back and forth. There was an interest, at least at a point in time, that we extend the station access out to include easier access to North Main Street as we were working to rezone the Center Business District, and we were trying to get more business support as well as residents there, which would drive the businesses. So part of our conversations with the Planning Board and the Chamber of Commerce really led to the decision to move, the access way up, towards Shore Road. So if there are options that would be within the scope of what the MBTA is willing to do that make more sense for the chamber, that's fine. Certainly would support that there, but we're then kind of having a different policy perspective than what we started with. So that's shifting as well. So we're still moving the heavier weight of the pedestrian traffic down towards the Aberjona lot, which we were initially, had decided to move away from. So wherever we land, I think, as long as we're including the chamber in the discussion, that's fine, but we're gonna have to pick one, I guess. But it sounds like a reasonable option. I mean, it's, even though the ramp was there before in Thompson Street, I mean, part of the upgrades to the station are accessibility issues, and things just can't be built the way that they were, when those ramps were built, however many years ago, 70 years ago. So,
Yeah, the only thing that, yes, we should involve the chamber. And it's very late in the game to do anything major with moving that ramp, and I'm worried that it would add cost, but certainly seems reasonable to talk about it. Yeah.
Amy?
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, I think it's worth exploring if we can. I mean, like you said, are we at 100% design or 99%, or where are we? But
99%.
99.5.
99.2.
Or 30,
yeah.
either one.
But I think that if,
Somewhere between
if
there.
there's an opportunity to discuss that, and that, if, I think, I totally agree, we should, involve the chamber in the discussions and really understand, what the outcomes are that they want to get from the ramp, so. Yeah,
Yeah, I mean, the most feedback we've gotten is on that Shore Road ramp.
That's true.
Even though for 10 years before, that's what the town asked for, but but if there's another option, that's clearly what got the most negative feedback. So if there's another option, then we should explore it. That's my view.
The other thing too, and maybe Beth, you can clarify this, there needs to be work done on the station, whether or not we choose to, have access to it from our residents. So if we said, okay, we're not gonna have, we're just gonna have the train go right through and we're not gonna have a station there, there's still work that needs to be done, right? So I think that there is a misperception that there will be no impact if we decide to not have a station. So, but that's not reality. So in order to keep it standing there so the train can go through, we will have to be doing some sort of shutdown for a period of time. And maybe it's a little bit more for us, adding the elevators and doing some of the ramps, but the station will have to have work no matter what. Okay.
All right, moving on to mitigation measures. A is to completely close the center station during construction. We believe that that's happening. So specifically, there's a comment about not having any need for commuter designated parking in the area parking lots. So we are considering that as well. And there are some specific recommendations later on the letter about sort of what to convert those commuter designated spots to. So all of that's being evaluated right now. So I can't say that, yes, these spaces are going to change. Because again, we're still pushing for some major changes that might shift that around a little bit. But in general, yes, we're looking to make sure that we change spaces from, commuters that might not be going there to make up for spaces that are lost for businesses.
we might not need as many commuter spaces. I think we're still gonna need some, because people could still walk to Wedgemere from
Yeah.
the downtown, the Aberjana lot, at
Yeah.
least. So I think just
Yeah, I mean,
cut them all out.
exactly. So if
Yeah.
there's commuters that are in, let's say, the Aberjona lot that are closest to Wedgemere Station, that might make sense. If there's commuters parking in a lot across the street from here, maybe we say we'll shift that towards, in-town employees, for example, right? So, again, there's,
What if we made that lot, instead of permit-based, or commuter permit, or whatever, if we made it daily pay,
Average on a lot.
the average on a lot? If we made it $10 a day, or $8 a day, or
So I think the only concern is
or
right
$1
now.
per hour.
Yeah, right now the lot, the permit is sold to town center employees as well as commuters.
Right.
The commuters pay $125 a quarter, the town center employees pay $10 to incentivize getting those. The problem we had for years was the town center employees parking on-street parking, so we did whatever we could to pull them out of the street and put them in a lot. So if you make that $5 a day or $10 a day, then you're really only attracting the commuters and you're losing what could be a town center employee spot, because that's kind of a hefty, $5 or $10 a day is a lot of money for a lot of folks who work in the town center to pay. That's not to say we couldn't make some of them.
We could make permits for
Yep.
employees and then an hourly or daily.
Yeah, so the first section of the average on a lot that you drive through before you get to the permit spaces
Yeah.
is the pay by space, and that is hourly.
Right.
So anybody could park there for the whole day. You're gonna pay, I think it's like $8 to $10 to park for the whole day, maybe $12. But
Yeah.
that option is there for anybody who wants to do it.
So my concern is twofold. One is the commuter parking permit encourages people to drive and park there every day. Even if it's a nice day and somebody could walk, well, it's already paid for, right? So why not just park and drive there? Or if it's a nice day and they could take a scooter, right? They already paid for the parking, so they're going to drive there, right? So whereas making it a daily use fee that is similar overall, or maybe it encourages people to use other modes of transportation and stuff, just having already paid for the parking and driving there. And the other thing is that we keep hearing about building a parking garage or doing something about parking, expanding parking. I think last time we looked at a parking garage, it was somewhere between $15,000 and $25,000 per parking space.
Yeah, somewhere in that range.
And we are charging for town center employees $10 a year. So we're subsidizing right now the town center businesses. We're subsidizing the parking for them. We're subsidizing it also for commuters, because we're charging $500 a year, but which still doesn't pay $15,000 to $25,000 per spot. It would take a lot of years to pay for that. So I think we really need to look at changing the economics of that. I think that would improve the parking situation if we encourage people to walk or take scooters or whatever when it's possible, versus just having a very cheap owned parking spot in the town center.
Yeah, I agree. I think that there's not a silver bullet here. We did, I think it was back in 2015, I don't know if you remember, we did a pretty expansive parking study to look at where we could locate a garage if we wanted to do that in response to the Chamber's request. We looked at Waterfield, we looked at Aberjona, we looked at the lot here at the Jenks Center, we looked behind the police station, I think. I don't remember all the locations, but, and the economics of the net, parking gain, including what's already there, was just was no way possible that would make sense for the town. And in evaluating other communities, we saw that some of those garages that they built, they were now taking down because they weren't performing at the level that they wanted to, and actually they were losing parking spaces because people didn't want to park in a garage. So, I think everyone says garage, and it's an impossible thing for us to build a garage economically here, to Mariano's point. And I think that there are some ways for us to be creative with looking for spaces. I know that we had talked about Church Street there, I think people don't see that as an area where they can park because it's not lined and there are no signs. But for people that are going to be on a long shift, you know, that are town center employees, or they're taking the train in, for, you know, work all day, we don't need to create that dead space at the lots. You know, we can have that open for people that are coming to use businesses. So I don't know. I think there's it's worth looking at, and I think some of the suggestions here are good ones. So.
Okay, so the continued methods of parking enforcement, increase parking signage, we can do that. So including a map of, including a map online and in print for people to reference in terms of the parking regulations, staff. So we actually did send one of our staff members to a training to help make those maps online, so they can roll over, so.
There is a PDF of the parking on the town's website currently, yeah.
And we're also, I've already spoken to several businesses about having them have maps and other materials available at their businesses regarding the MBTA, parking and other projects. So actually it's sort of like creating a menu of all the things that are happening. So some have offered their storefront window, some have said like post it up. So we'll continue to do that. Moratorium on development of the Waterfield lot until station construction is complete. Right now, we do plan on coordinating the Waterfield lot development with the station construction. We think it'll take at least a year. So if we do find a developer that we have an agreement with at fall town meeting, it will take at least a year for that person to get all the project design, permits, everything underway. So the timing would work that there might be a little bit of an overlap. And we'll discuss at an RFP committee meeting about what exactly kind of work that we would allow them to do. We're also trying to consider what kind of parking requirements we'll have for that development. So whether it's parking requirements to replace the parking that is there or maintain the parking that's there, and the parking requirements for the actual development itself. Okay, keep Shore Road open during construction. We are trying to actually make this a moot point by moving the project away from Shore Road, but these are still conversations we're having. I have heard at some point that they might have to close on Shore Road for part of the construction if they were to construct it as designed. And in terms of any kind of mitigation, we'd absolutely have to have them provide access to the businesses, the residents that are there.
So I think if, this is one area if we do think about weekend construction or night construction, this would potentially, I know there's residents there, so night construction could be challenging. But it would help with the business access during the weekdays.
Well, can you access those buildings from the public safety building?
Yeah, so you could go up, cut through the Cullen lot, and then go out that way.
So E has a lot of very specific recommendations for the different lots. We're still evaluating this, but if you have any thoughts, just let us know.
It's good to have new ideas for addressing this.
So 7 and 8, I didn't get a chance to ask Michelle. This was copied to the school committee, so I don't know what, if any of this is on their agenda. I had reached out to them informally about some ideas before getting this letter, and just heard a very general response of yikes, without having any specifics. So I'm gonna see if Michelle's gonna have this on her agenda. F is form a committee to explore ways to incentivize consumers to shop local during the station renovation. Form a committee through the Chamber of Commerce with town officials to look at ways to drive business to center businesses through events, incentives, discounts during this time of construction. So we're already starting to do this. Craig and I actually have a standing phone call on Tuesday mornings to go over this list of ideas in many different categories that the businesses came up with last fall. I've included some funds in our budget that hopefully FinCom will consider. So one is specific $10,000 fund within the Winchester Cultural Council to help fund events that are in the area that'll help attract people downtown. I've also put in money for the master plan that hopefully will specifically going towards having a thriving downtown center. And Craig and I have been talking about putting together grant applications, just like, for example, like looking for a Cummings grant. And we've also been talking about various events that we could put on. I think there was some ongoing discussion about like a Winchester card where you get discounts at businesses. And there's a whole bunch of other recommendations that are part of this Google Doc that we're sort of running through and prioritizing right now. So those things are happening. So that's essentially the comments we're looking to pursue in a letter back to the chamber. Again, some of it involves some sort of wrangling with the MBTA that we're doing, and some internal discussions about the lots.
The other option I would mention as well is we've been talking about this idea of a business improvement district, for, I don't know, probably 10 years as well. It seems like everything is on that timeline. And there's been resistance from property owners to have an increased surcharge, which would be 1% to 3% on their tax bill that would go into the town center, into those businesses. I think the select board and the town manager and everyone involved is willing to do whatever it takes to support local businesses. But we also need the support of not just the chamber, but the local property owners who are members of the chamber. So I think I've never seen such engagement with the chamber on the town side. This letter asks a lot of questions that we don't have answers to. I think continuing that ongoing discussion will be helpful, but I think that there's a give and take on both sides of it, and some of it is going to have to be financial if we want to keep some of those businesses alive there. And when I talk about that surcharge, it can't be something that is passed on to the business owners as well. So we're on board. Lisa's investing money, is talking to the chamber at least every week. I know Amy is. This is a fully engaged process, and we're waiting to see what the scope of it looks like through the future meetings. So thank you.
And I think that the commitment is beyond just the 2 years. That I think the board and Lisa and her staff, I think the commitment to the businesses is going to be ongoing. It's not just the 2 years when this project is happening. And that's some of the conversations we're having with Craig about things we can do, events we can have, ways that we can engage people from outside of Winchester to come and visit Winchester. So I think there's a lot of excitement around it. I think there's a lot of opportunity. So I just wanted to point out that Lisa's thinking big picture too, as is Craig, and I think the chamber hopefully will too, and engage us not only in these 2 years that are going to be tough, admittedly.
I think the property owners need to realize that a business improvement district would bring a lot of value to their properties. A lot of other towns fund events, and a lot of the marketing gets funded through business improvement district. That's all money that doesn't go to municipal budget. Business improvement district is used specifically to generate business for the businesses that occupy that commercial property. So I agree. I think that that's something that needs to be part of the conversation. It can't be just that the taxpayers are funding every single event and every single answer to this, right? The property owners who are collecting the rent from the businesses also need to make a contribution via a business improvement district.
Yeah, I actually made the recommendation that for a committee that we're forming, that some of them actually
Yeah.
join.
Yeah,
Not just the business owners, but the
Property
landlords as well.
yeah.
I think that there's, we don't want any vacant storefronts, and we gotta work together to figure out how to avoid that. So.
And there's an economic value to the, property owners to make sure that they're, they don't have
Yeah.
vacant storefronts, and there's a cost to them, and I think that cost is probably pretty close to what that 1 to 3% surcharge is. And, this is a group of people that they're making their own choices about what to do with that money. So it's not like it comes to us and they send it to us. They're a group of members of the chamber, the property owners, and they're saying, we want to put flowers here, we want to do an event, we want to hire somebody to do economic development. I mean, one of the, primary reasons that we hired Lisa was because of her economic development experience, and that was in direct response to the chamber. So we're fully engaged. But it's a lot, so.
Okay, so we're working on a response, we're working through some issues, and we'll send something out, we'll maybe share it via Google Doc, have you give your input, and then send it off. Great.
All right.